Today on Garage 31, we're talking tire inserts. Some people hate them. I personally love tire inserts. I think they change a lot of characteristics towards your bike, especially running low tire pressure. And they act very similar to adding tokens or volume spacers to your fork. Because you reduce the air volume in your tires, you can have a very soft initial bite, but then if you hit something harder, the air pressure will ramp up quicker because there's physically less air. I've used almost every brand out there. There's only 3 I would recommend. One being Cushcore, which tends to be the hardest one to fit, and I'll show you how to fit that in this video. I've also used Tannus armor. I work with a lot of guys who I sponsor, and they are all sponsored by themselves by Tannus. A little bit cheaper, probably equally as hard to install, maybe a tiny bit easier. And then you've got the Vittoria airliner, which I used first, and this is a kind of a cut to size style. They all do the same function, so no matter what brand you get, I think you'll be pretty stoked, but installing them can be tricky. So let me show you how. Now, if you're running tire inserts, you may want to think about grabbing some specific tire insert compatible valve. I do make my own. I sell them through my website, bikegarage31.ca, or soon to be on Amazon too, which is pretty cool. And the difference between a tire insert valve is it'll have a cross section cut out here that will allow, once the valves or once the tire insert's inserted, air and sealant to flow through the system, so you can still use it as a regular valve. If you didn't have that, the valve may sit flush against the tire insert, especially with Cushcore, and then you can only put air in, but you can never get air out. So I've got my that's my rear wheel off my personal bike. It's currently set up tubeless, and you will need to have a tubeless system already set up to install most of the big brands of tire insert, as they won't work with tubes. And I've taken the non-drive side off, because what we're actually going to do is put the wheel on the ground, and if we had the other bead off, we might bend the disc, so it's going to be down like this. Now with Cushcore, I'd recommend stretching it out before. They tell you to insert it first and then put the tire on. I find that I don't prefer that method. So choose somewhere to start. I'm going to start putting the insert in. I'm going to use my knees to hold it. Now, because this Cushcore is used, it's stretched out. If this was new, it'd be a lot more difficult than this. But essentially, you want to work your way around and then continue moving your knee around until you've got some good leverage to finish it off. And this knee here is going to block the tire insert from coming out, and I'm going to have to use all my muscles and get it in. So now that tire insert's in, we're going to have to put the bead of the tire on as well. This time we're going to start opposite the rim, or opposite the valve. I'm going to grab my pan in my hand, and I'm going to move as much tire over as possible, and then scoop it back whilst putting some pressure down. So I'm going to, with my pan in the hand, move the tire across the rim, and then scoop it back up. Again, scoop it back up. I'm going to go this side. And you'll see the tire has a mark on it that lets you know when it's inflated properly. I'm going to push that line down into the middle of the tire, and that's going to make essentially the circumference of the inside of the rim smaller and make it easier to put this last piece on. So I'm just going to push the tire down into the well. And at this point I'm going to add my sealant. Now that line I was talking about on the tire is actually there. I'll just zoom in for you so you can see it. Just that one there. And if you go, if I scan around, obviously this bottom part's not on the rim yet, but you can still see it there. And then I've tucked the tire in down here, so you, from this side all the way over back down to the bottom again, you can't see that line. It's just from here to here. If you could see that line all the way down, all the way around, that means you haven't got the tire into the well of the rim. It's going to find, you're going to find it's really, really tricky to get the tire on. Sealant's going to go in. On a 29-inch wheel, enduro style wheel, you're probably going to want to use 60 to 90 mils of sealant. So you see the sealant down there. Now obviously this is loose still, so we're going to be careful and move the tire around back on the ground so that the opening's at the top and all the sealant rolls down. Now here comes the tricky part. So again, I'm just going to double check. You can use a tire lever too to push the well of the tire into the well of the rim. And then again, that same technique, I'm going to pull back, push down. There we go. Tire's on. To make blowing it up at home, if you don't have an air compressor, we're going to remove the valve core here. Now if you purchase some Garage 31 valves from me, they come with tool built in already. Let's see if I can get it to focus. So that's the top cap there, and this area here is a tool that you can use to take out the valve core. So that core goes on there, unwinds, and removing the core is going to mean we have an unrestricted valve here, and it's going to allow more air in. I just have a regular old shot pump here. Shock pump, not shock pump. Stick it on the compressor side, and then you're just going to want to pump as mad as you can until you hear some pops. Okay, so we're good there. I'm going to take this pump off, and then with my index finger close the valve off so there's no air leaks. Stick the core back in. Tighten the core up. Doesn't have to be super tight. And then I'm going to overinflate the tire just to help it seat 100%. So I'm just going to pump it up to 40 psi, no more than that. Now even though the tire's on here and it's holding air, we're just going to make sure that the bead of the tire, so that line we were trying to hide earlier when we were putting the tire on, we can see that on both sides. That's what that popping noise is. When you're inflating it, it's just the bead popping onto the rim. Sorry, audibly, there's no leaks. You can double check that with some soapy water. Now obviously the sealant has to move for it to do its job, so you can spin it around. I would put it back on my bike and just go for a 5-minute pedal around. If you're running downhill casing tires, chances are this will be flat tomorrow, especially if the tire's new. That's okay. Just reinflate it, go for a ride. Sealant can be a little bit temperamental tubeless can be a little bit temperamental to set up. But once it's set up, it tends to stay really good. So we're not completely done here. Maybe we'll have to add some air tomorrow, but overall this went pretty easy.